Okay, I'm going to break this drawing down into steps that are way easier to follow than you might imagine, so that you can have a go, create this, and amaze yourself. Okay, so as always, I'm using the app Procreate. I'm using one of the default A4 canvases, which is 297 by 210 millimeters at 300 dpi. I'm also using the sRGB color profile, the one that ends in 2.1. Again, here on the list, it's probably by default anyway. In terms of the brushes, I'm only going to be using the default brushes within Procreate. So if we go to this area where it says Classic Library, click on there, back to Libraries. You have two options. I'm going to be using the Classic. So you don't need to download any brushes. In terms of the colors, I've pre-selected a color palette, and you can download the color file for free over at my Patreon. There is a link down in the description. Alternatively, the hexadecimal codes that you find here are also down in the description too. If you do venture over to Patreon, that is the place that you can support this channel, as well as gain access to exclusive content such as extended versions of most of these tutorials. I'd like to say a massive thank you to those people who do support me over at Patreon. It makes a huge difference, so thank you so much. I couldn't do this without you. And another way of supporting is just simply subscribing, leaving a comment, giving the video a thumbs up. All of those things help as well. With all of that said and done, we're going to get started. Okay, so on layer 1, first thing we're going to do is go to our colors, first color on the top row, drag down from the color circle top right into the canvas and it flood fills. Now we don't want this color for long, it's a bit too rich, so I'll create a new layer on top, layer 2, go to the brushes, airbrushing, soft brush, and I'm going to put it maybe about 45% size and 100% opacity. And then just a little bit under halfway, I'm going to do a band of this color. So you can see now there's a smaller gap at the bottom compared to the top. Then I'm going to go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and we're going to slide it across to about 80% and deselect. We've got that nice sort of gradient from a darker blue at the top down to a lighter blue, about, well, just under halfway. We'll create a new layer, layer 3. We'll go in with the third color, put it down to about 20% size, a little bit less than 100, so maybe about 80% opacity. And then about a third of the way up, band of this across, adjustments, Gaussian blur, and we're going to slide that across as well to about the 50%, deselect. Go to our layers and create a new layer, layer 4, and very similar again with the fourth color, slightly smaller again, about 10% size and 80% strength, opacity, and then just at the kind of the bottom area of that pink, so you can still see a lot of the pink above that. Adjustments, Gaussian blur, blur that in to about 30% and deselect. And that's given us a really nice gradient. We're going to have mountains that sort of stick up above that point here and just sort of cut into that area. We're going to go to our layers, create a new layer, layer 5, go in with, well, we'll skip a color, we'll go to the 6th color, we'll go in with the soft brush, with an airbrushing still, 5% size, put it quite low, maybe about 20% opacity. And then I'm just going to bring in some points and some cloud just coming in from the side there, and it's at a low opacity, so you don't need to be too hesitant. There's not really too much you can go do wrong at this stage. We're just getting in some very subtle shapes. Then we're going to turn it down, 3%. You can see it's a little bit more precise. As soon as you put it to a lower percent, then it becomes a little bit more, I like to use the word scratchy, but just, you see the shapes that you're adding a little bit more. So you just need to be a little bit more considered. Maybe have some little breakaway sections. Maybe turn it down even further to the 2%. Zoom in, back to even lower on that 2%. And then as it goes sort of like further away, those little blobs turn into streaks. All kind of clusters together. You get patches of cloud that just become stripes in the sky, really. Not too long. You want a collection of them. Maybe back up again just a little bit. Higher on the 2%. So right at the top. There's a little bit of variation even within the same percentage. the 2% isn't necessarily the same as a different 2%, it depends where on that slider you put it. So don't spend too long on these, just a few sort of dashes in the sky. Back up again, 4%. Maybe just make a bit more of some of these bigger sections. We're going to have partly obscured by treetops, so it's not hugely significant. We're just creating suggestions, a few taps up here, maybe a couple of taps up here as well. And that's probably enough to start with. We're going to go to that layer, tap on it and put on the alpha lock. We'll move along to the next colour, the 7th colour. Stay with the soft brush. We'll put it up 5%, stay at the 20% strength. We'll just run a sweep as it comes sort of like more into the centre area here. A bit more of this pink, just to soften it in slightly. Not too much. On that layer, I'm going to tap on it and turn back off the alpha lock. I'm going to go in with the 8th colour, soft brush with an airbrushing, 10% size, really quite low, 10% opacity, and just run a couple of sweeps of this across. Just want a bit more of that pink. Strengthen it up a little bit. Brought some of that glow back in, and I will just go back to the 6th colour, turn it down 3%, stay at the 10% opacity, that's fine. Maybe just bring 1 or 2 out a little bit more. Obviously they're going to get a little bit buried as we add more of those light colours over the top, so just bring them out just a touch more, especially at the sides. That will do for now. I'm going to create a new layer on top. I'm going to tap on the N and put it to the add blend mode. I'm going to stay with the soft brush with an airbrushing. I'm going to go in with the 5th colour on the bottom row, it's really strong red colour, 7% size, 5% opacity, and just at the bottom of that kind of glow area, go over a little bit more. It's quite intense this, you want to just minimal amount, and then we're going to switch back to the yellow colour, the 4th colour, and then just carefully, even underneath that, we're just going to do a bit of that yellow, and it is really quite bright. It's going to be obscured, we're going to cut into that with mountains at this point, but you can see the influence that that has. Don't do too much. I'm going to turn the brush size down to 2%, stay at the 5% opacity, and then just on the underside of some of these clouds, in fact, we're going to turn that even smaller on that 2%, maybe even lower on that, about 3% opacity. Just the underside of some of these clouds are going to be highlighted. The sun has clearly just set, just disappeared. It's going to have a little bit of an impact on the clouds. The underside of them anyway. We can do just a few bits of textures that cut across for now. And maybe go to the red 5th colour at the bottom. As we go higher up, we'll use that to highlight the underside of some of these clouds. And that's a good start for now. So we're going to create a new layer, layer 7 on top of that. And we're going to move along to the 9th colour on the top row. I'm going to go to the medium brush with an airbrushing. I'm going to put it to maybe 5% size, 100% opacity. And then just at the bottom area there, we're going to run this across. And it should be a note darker than that area there. So the sky looks like it's glowing, and this looks like it's slightly a darker tone. Turn it down, 2%. And we can just create some points at which it goes up and down a little bit, undulates. We really are just going to feature it kind of in this area. Don't worry about the rest of it, because I'm very quickly now going to create a new layer on top of it, layer 8, and we're going to move along to the 10th colour on the top row. I'm going to stick with the medium brush with an airbrushing, 4% size, 100% opacity. These are just going to sweep up slightly. In fact, let's turn it down a bit, 3%, because we want to be able to create a little bit of a point on top of some mountains that are here. We can always rearrange these things. I'm going to feature some trees here, so in that case, let's go to the transform. Let's nudge it this way a little bit more. maybe to about there. Come up here, and then it's going to rise up on the other side as well. So we can just go and fill some of this in. Maybe turn it down even more, 2%. Control some of these shapes, sharpen them up slightly. This is slightly closer mountain range, and again, we've got a different tone and a different hue than this. And then I want to just sort of decide where the mountain peak is going to be. Once it's sort of in the middle of the canvas, maybe about there. And we can endlessly shift and move this around, fine tune it. Just because we're adding it now doesn't mean we can't go in with the eraser and make some different choices. You can see we're making a bit of a mountain range, some lumps and bumps at the top. Comes down, and then we've got another couple of bumps. Comes down. Initially just get it in there because you can always fine tune it. Just take it off to the side for now. Okay, let's just shade that in. Turn it up 10% or so. Fill in. Just turn the brush size down if you need to. 2% or even, yeah, lowest part 2% is probably about right. Zoom in and just refine that mountain peak. Try to get a shape that you're happy with because we're going to be doing other layers that relate to it. So try to get it to a point where you're happy now. So we don't have to go back and make too many changes later. It's possible to do so. It's not the end of the world, but let's try to make it look good at this point. A little sharper. Like I say, we can go back and fine tune, but for now, that will do. Go to our layers, create a new layer, layer 9. I'm going to tap on it and put on the clipping mask, which creates a little arrow and an attachment to this layer. So now if we go in with a darker color, for example, it will stop at the boundary of the layer that it's linked to underneath it. Now on this layer, I'm going to go to the organic spires brush. I'm going to go to the third color on the middle row. I'm going to put the brush size maybe about 5% and about 70% opacity. I'm going to zoom in just a bit. And I'm going to favor the right side. We're just going to drag down, almost imagine like a ridge here, so a separation between one side and another. I'm going to drag down some of this texture, put it near the top a little bit on this side as well. Doesn't mean that we don't have any. Let's turn it down a bit more, 3%. A few taps, doesn't need to be overly neat. And then each of these little ridges, try to put it on the right side a little bit, but also it goes with the direction of this shape, doesn't it? It's just a starting point. You don't need to be overly worried about the textures that it has created. Maybe over these ones, so take a line here, bring it through. A line here, bring it through. Good thing about this brush is it doesn't allow you to be too controlling over the texture. It kind of does its own random thing, and that's actually quite good. Stops you making, you know, a lot of mistakes are made because you're trying to control it too much. A little bit of happenstance, a bit of random is actually quite beneficial. Then I'm going to go back to the second color on the middle row. I'm going to go to the charcoal, burnt tree, down to maybe 2%, size 50% strength. And we're going to have some lighter colors coming in. Again, try to make a feature of this kind of separation point, this ridge. A few taps of that color. But it can also come onto this side as well, a little bit. Just sort of pepper this in. Doesn't need to be overly thought out. It is kind of a little bit random, and that's fine. Sweep it into some of the lighter areas. All good. We're just getting variations of tone and hue. Zoom out to check how it looks, but we're actually going to go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur. Zoom in so you can see. Slide it across, maybe only to about 2%. It just slightly softens it together and helps you visualize it as a kind of unified texture. Back in with the third color, and we're going to change brushes. We're going to go back to the airbrushing soft brush, lower that 2% size, maybe about 40% strength. And we'll zoom in. And well, we're just going to be a little bit more controlled. In fact, I'm going to put it even lower, down into the 1%. Just a few more taps. Create some more intentional shapes. We don't want to lose the top of that peak if it's too light. Just some little areas, little channels, little blobs. And we need to help describe the slope, shape of the mountain. So bring a collection of shapes that all collect together. I'm going to go with the direction of the mountain slope as well. Add quite a few bits like this onto the shaded side, especially the darker side. And we can also go in with the second colour. We can bring out some of those lighter colours. In fact, maybe we should go for the 10th colour on the first row, just so it's not too glaring everywhere. We don't want it to glow too much. Want it to be snow that's maybe in the shadow, even lower on that 1%. And we can just pick out some little shapes, little bits of snow that are just settled in there still, haven't melted away. Again, it doesn't need to be overly considered, but when you zoom out, you can see it just gives a bit more definition. Add a bit more into this side, a few more patchy shapes. And honestly, the effect when it's a distant mountain range, when you have other things that are going to just dominate a little bit more, it's actually coherent enough, and that's sometimes all that matters. And back to the third colour. Like I say before, maybe just preference one side. So just like we had dark on this side, maybe a little bit dark. And it's maybe a little bit less about shadow and light, but maybe one side receives more sun during the day, and therefore it melts the snow a bit more on one side. Maybe that's the reason. I don't know. It's not a real landscape, so we can tell ourselves any story we like, I suppose. Let's come over to this side. A few more shapes dotted through. Roughly go with the shape of the mountains, like on this side too. And that's probably enough, honestly, for now. We'll create a new layer, layer 10. We'll perhaps go in with the fourth colour on the middle row. Stick with a soft brush with an airbrushing, maybe 5% size. Let's stay with a 40% strength. And now, well, it's going to be underneath that and separate from that. So we can do a band of this that goes across. Do a band that goes all the way across, like that. Then we can go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, slide it across to about the 15% and deselect. Zoom in, maybe turn the size of the brush down, 2%, still at the 40% strength. And well, we'll just bring some of these textures from that band up to join. Not completely connect, but kind of give the suggestion of a continuation of that mountain shape. At least somewhat. They relate and they ultimately are part of the same kind of landscape. Just a few suggestions of it. Let's turn that up again. 6% size, stronger 80% strength. And that's that bottom area. Let's just build in more of that colour. In fact, let's just make it a nice big band of that. Just so it helps us identify some of the lighter colours that we've actually created. I'm going to create a new layer, layer 11, and I'm going to move along to a significantly darker colour. We're going to go for the fifth colour on the middle row. Let's switch to let's go to the medium hard brush this time. 5% size, 100% opacity, and this is going to cut in. It's going to have a low point just slightly to the side of centre, maybe about here, and then it's going to swell up a little bit, and then sort of plateau and maybe, I don't know, go off here and you can't quite tell where it goes, and that's fine. It's going to be behind trees. Maybe we can have another little kind of undulation, swells up over at this side, and then retreats again. Then we can just drag into the lower area, get rid of any little anomalies, and then we can turn it down 2% size and just go in there and fine tune if we need to. But you can see it does dip down there a little bit more than anywhere else. In fact, I'd like it to do that a little bit more. So I'm going to go to the adjustments, liquify, push, put about 60% size, 100% pressure, and just in the center there, push it down a little bit more, reveal a bit more space in my example anyway. I'm going to create a new layer, layer 12. I'm going to go to a much lighter color. I'm going to go to the 10th color on the middle row, medium hard brush, 5% size, 100% opacity. And well, I just need to really understand the foreground and how it's going to relate to everything else. So we're going to have an area of snow that's really just down here. It's going to sweep up over at this side. It's going to reveal and leave that bit there. And then similar over at this side, maybe not quite as high. We're going to have a sweep of it across here. And this is where we're going to have trees. We're going to have a little snow path, a well-trodden kind of path that runs through. Now that we've placed that, I would like a little bit more space at the bottom, so I'm going to show you probably the best way of actually shifting and arranging things. So I'm going to go back to layer 9 first, tap on it and merge down. I'm also going to go to layer 10. That really is heavily connected to that layer, the mountain area, so tap on that and merge down. You can see that's all on one layer. But we don't want to disconnect that little pink area. That is kind of essential too. So we'll tap on layer 8 and merge down with layer 7. So they are kind of connected now as well. Show you. We don't want to lose the connection. And then I'm going to turn off, untick all the other areas. And really, if we move the sky up, then it allows us to put more things in the lower area. But rather than trying to condense all those different layers, because we have one of the layers that has the add blend mode on, and if you take that and merge it down, you can see it changes the effect. So we don't want to lose the add blend mode. So the better way of doing it from this layer, so keep on that layer, wrench, add, copy canvas, and paste. Let's go back to the layers and we'll identify that it's taken all of those layers, flattened them, and put a version of that here as one solid layer, which is really useful for what we're about to do. Then I can go to the transform and just move it up. And you can see I've reclaimed or pushed it up about that much at the top. That means I've reclaimed about that much area at the bottom. You maybe just do a little bit more, somewhere about there, in which case that band of light is more in the center of the canvas. And I think that makes more sense. Then we don't need to get rid of those layers, but we can put back in the mountain range. And now we can see that that pink looks too light. So it needs to be positioned up there again. So again, let's go to layer 7, transform. And then we need to move it up a similar amount until it makes more sense, about there. You can see it's just provided more space at the bottom. That now looks darker than the sky, so it all works. Back in with layer 11, go and select layer 11, transform. Let's move it up. And this is the beauty of digital. It's that you endlessly get to shift and rearrange things. Layer 12, tap on it. And I'm actually going to nudge that up a little bit as well, to about there. And you can see that's just given us much more space to work with, and that's much better. And when we're on the top layer, so we can just go and fill in that bottom area. You can see we've shifted everything up. It's not too much fuss, just a little bit of rearranging. Turn the brush down, create a slightly smoother look, like so. I'm going to go to layer 11, go with the smudge on the soft brush with an airbrushing, 1% size, maybe about 60% strength opacity. And I don't want to form individual trees as such, but I want that edge to look like it has trees. And so we're just slightly nudging up. We're not making a big deal of it, but certainly if we just nudge it up, it gives it a different effect. Even when you zoomed out, it's a small detail that somehow is quite noticeable. Don't worry too much about the edges. We're going to have trees obscuring it. It's mainly just this sweep down here. You might see more of it over this side. Oops, just notice this edge needs to nudge it over that way. Just in places you might get a few more that are noticeable. Yeah, just a few nudges all the way along. Push it up. Gives the suggestion that there are trees even without drawing any trees. Stay on layer 11. I'm going to go back to the second colour on the middle row. Let's go to the soft brush with an airbrushing, 2% size, 80% strength. And I just want there to be some kind of clearings, bits of snow, maybe a field back here. And it's a slightly different tone, so we'll notice it even when it's alongside this one, a little bit darker. So we're still going to see it, maybe a little bit of separation, 2%. Another little patch over here. Zoom out so you can take in that effect. A couple of little kind of fields, clearings. Stay on the same layer. We've used the 5th colour. Let's go to the 6th colour. Soft brush, 2% size, maybe only about 30% strength. And then maybe just at the edge, there's going to be a bit of a leading edge of trees and therefore maybe some shadow. Gives it some, well, a bit of 3D form. Without this, it just becomes a little bit flat. So you need to give it just a leading edge where the shadow is going to be the most noticeable. Run that all the way across. It's a subtle detail, but you can see how it just gives it form. And well, we can run a few taps of this, a few points of this all the way in the background there. Just keep it random, but you've got this sense of texture then. So it doesn't look too flat. Just a few points in and around. Don't spend necessarily a long time on this. Just a hint at textures. So from that layer 11, we're going to create a new layer, and because we've condensed and other strange things, it's also called layer 11, but don't worry. So the top version of layer 11, I'm going to go to the drawing, evolve brush. Now, if we tap on the brush, stroke path, spacing at 50%. Turn it down, lower that 2%, maybe about 90% strength, and we can just create some trees that stick up. We just see the top of them. Run some across here, stick up. We just see the tops, and then you run off and blend in down here. Just gives a little bit more. Maybe through here, there could just be a couple as well. Point up here. Do a point and then just sort of zigzag. Don't press on too hard with this brush. It is pressure sensitive, so you press on a lot, then it kind of goes a bit crazy, but a little bit more pressure. We'll just keep it consistent and just sort of scribble in these kind of cone shapes. Blend it through. Maybe there's just a few details here in the snow. And then let's go in with this lightest colour up here, the 5th colour. Go back in with the airbrushing soft brush, 1% size, 20% strength, and maybe there's just some sun, a suggestion of light. Don't need to go overboard with it. Just a little hint. There's a changing kind of surface. And then with that whole layer, we're going to go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur. Blur it in slightly, not a lot, maybe 2%. Deselect and just softens it in. Now I'm going to do a section of trees here that are going to be more prominent. So we're going to go for the 8th colour on the middle row, drawing evolve brush. I'm going to put it down, 1% size, 90% strength. And we're just going to have them rising about here. So you can do the tree trunks in first. I'll just zoom in. Do the tree trunks. We don't need to have a huge amount, just a few. A selection, and then they can just sort of peter off like that. A few up here, and again, we're going to have them obscured up here anyway. So just you can see a selection. Do zigzag left to right. Doesn't need to be overly considered or overly neat. Just a bit of a zigzag. And they disappear off there behind that snow. Again, just zigzag left to right. There's slightly more background anyway, so they don't need a huge amount of time. Increase the pressure and the width of the zigzag as you come down. And if they bump into each other, collide, that's all good. There you go. I will blur it just a little bit more, and it is on the same layer as these, so I don't want to do too much. I'll just go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and just blur it in, maybe 1%, just to slightly soften it. We don't want to overdo it because these are also still on the same layer. We'll go to the layer, tap on it, and put on the alpha lock. I'm going to go to the 9th color, stay with the evolve brush, right down on that 1% and maybe about 30% strength. And just do some taps of this snow, just so they're not too flat. They need snow that's obviously settled on them. They're a little bit back there, so we're not kind of overly worrying about them, but when you can zoom out, you can see the effect. If you want to do some separation of shapes, imagine how the snow falls on the branches, then you're welcome to do that, but I think it's sufficient just to get a smattering of this colour in as a texture. You can always go back in and refine it if we feel we need to, but I think when we're zoomed out, it's a small detail. I'm going to go to the selection, freehand, just grab them, close the loop, 3 fingers drag down, allows us to copy, 3 fingers drag down again, allows us to paste. Now if we go here, it's created an inserted image. Go to the transform and we can move that around any way we wish to. So I'm actually going to flip it horizontally. I'm going to move it over here, maybe just find somewhere like that, deselect, and we probably need to go in with the eraser. Doesn't really matter, airbrushing, 5% size, 100% opacity, just get rid of any little bits that we don't need. We'll just create some extra trees up there, which is quite useful. Okay, so I'm going to go to the top layer. I'm going to tap on it and put on the alpha lock. And then with the alpha lock on, I'm going to go in with the soft brush with an airbrushing, 10% size, 10% opacity. I'm going to go for quite a strong colour really. I'm going to go for the 8th colour on the top row. Just in the middle there, just hints of this sweeping in. I'm pressing very lightly. It's just a hint in that middle section. It's very reflective snow, so you need to bring some of that warmth in. Just zoom out, you can see it's just a blush, just a little glow of warmth. Not much at all. In fact, I'm going to create a new layer, tap on it and put on the clipping mask, which links it to that layer, and I'm going to go to the N and put it on the add blend mode. And on this layer, I'm going to go in with the 5th colour on the bottom row. Still the soft brush, 10% size, even lower though, maybe only 5% opacity. And just gentle sort of sweep of this across. Again, not too much. We can easily go too far with this. Just aim for just slightly off the edge, so it just kind of grabs it there. And then we can go to the yellow colour, the 4th colour. Aim for slightly off, so we're probably pressing it here so it just catches the edge there a little bit too, but not much. I'm going to go back to layer 12 and I'm going to go in with a darker colour, so maybe the 2nd colour on the bottom row. Soft brush, 10% size, maybe only the 5% opacity still. I'm going to start building in some shadow at the sides. Going to have features and other things. In fact, let's go for a more vibrant blue, maybe the 9th colour. And we can just nudge it in from the sides here. We don't want to take it all the way to the very top. But certainly off at the sides, we're going to have other features. So just a bit of this. We're giving it a little bit of a gradient within this foreground area. I'm just going to go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, blur it in slightly, maybe 10%, deselect. Okay, let's go to the top, create a new layer on top of that. And on this layer, I'm just going to do some tree trunks first. So let's go to the airbrushing medium brush, 2% size really at the bottom, and 100% opacity, and we're going to set the base of our tree, and we can just sketch it in. Don't worry if your line's a little bit wobbly, you can go over it a couple of times. A little bit thicker at the base, and then another one here, not quite as tall, and a little bit kind of just generally a bit shorter. And then we can have other ones. Back here, maybe we need to turn that brush size down to 1%. Have a cluster of them. Back there, nice big one. Here, again, right at the edge of the frame, maybe we need to turn that up again. Broader at the base. Again, don't worry too much about the neatness of this. Thinner at the top though. Back down again, lowest part of 2%, and another one here, another one here. And that's given us some trees to work with. I'm going to go to the Artistic, Hearts brush, tap on it, stroke path, spacing at 20%. Done. I'm going to put the brush size at 2% and 100% opacity. And let's just go to the biggest tree first of all. And I'm just going to allow them to do a combination of tapping, swinging this brush out, and it's just textured enough to start to give the impression of sort of pine needles and that type of tree. Swing them out. We're going to add snow to these as well, so it's not the end of the world if your shapes are a little bit off. And we don't want to make them too uniform. It doesn't need to be an absolute corresponding one on this side and therefore one on that side. So try to keep it a little bit more random. Notice mine is getting a little bit too uniform, so I'm going to start just deliberately making them not line up a bit more. Make them misalign, but also we can start to just sort of scribble over them, cluster it up so there's less daylight coming through. As it comes further down, swing these branches down, and they actually get a little bit heavier as they get bigger, so they come down at more of a steep angle. Again, just scribble in as it gets lower down. You're not going to see much light coming through anyway. And if you need to just zoom in and just thicken up any of these branches, even up here, that's fine. So once we've got one shape, I mean, frankly, we could just go to the selection, freehand, grab it, and we've got some tree trunks there, so it's a little bit clumsy. Close the loop, 3 fingers down, copy, 3 fingers down, whoops, try again, and paste. It's created a duplication. We could move it somewhere else in our scene. It's almost missing a bit now, but we could put it onto this one, so let's flip it horizontally. Try and line it up. It's going off the edge of the canvas a little bit more, maybe. That's fine. We have some extra tree trunks there now that we probably don't need, so let's go with the eraser. Medium hard brush, turn it down, 100% opacity. And we can just fine tune it. We can always just cut in there, get rid of any bits we don't want. Easy enough just to fine tune and fix it. It's just it saves a few minutes if you're so inclined to do so. Obviously it is a duplication, so you need to be a little bit careful, but when we add snow, it's going to disguise that duplication to some extent anyway. Let's take that inserted image and merge down so it is on one layer again. Back in with the hearts brush, and well, we can just create an extra couple of branches maybe as it comes down to the ground, and we want to slightly modify it. Again, the snow is going to make a big difference too. Slightly lower on that 2%, and well, we need to do something similar to these trees just behind it, and perhaps we don't need to spend as long because they're just that little bit further away. But yeah, spend some time. Down to the ground. Another one here. Again, obscured, so we don't need to spend too long on it. Down to the ground area. And some over at this side. Again, they are going to be more clear than the background distant ones, but not all equally detailed. Although even the foreground one's a little bit rough, and that's fine. We're going to add snow to them, and it's going to definitely sort of bring out some detail. And they are, once zoomed out, not that huge a detail in the environment anyway, so You don't want to spend too long on a feature when actually you're going to be kind of, your eye is distracted to other areas. It just needs to serve its purpose. So left to right with this brush in a slightly rough way, really, quite sketchy, but it's detailed enough. Maybe we'll just have a little outlier here. I'm not even drawing a trunk for it, but a little one there maybe. Back to the airbrushing soft brush, 1% size, and just do a little tree trunk up the middle. With all of those, I'm going to go to the layer Gaussian blur and I'm going to blur it in slightly, 2%, just to soften it. It's a little bit too defined otherwise. I'm going to create a new layer, layer 15, and I'm going to go in initially, let's go in with the 9th color. I'm going to go to the airbrushing soft brush, put it really quite low down at 1% and about 70% strength. Zoom in. In fact, even lower for those ones on that 1%. And then just imagine the snow that's settled on the top edge of some of these branches for these distant trees. So let's get them in to begin with. If we start with the big ones, and then we're not going to notice the little ones so easily, so it's going to be a bit tricky. So we'll do the little ones first. And even that's quite bright. Maybe we could do this second colour on the top row. Not much different, just a little bit more subdued. Just subtly different. But sometimes when you're dealing with a lot of different snow colours, that subtle difference actually can benefit. So that's for those ones. Let's come over here. Got some anomalies we can tidy up. It's not a problem. Again, aim for the top edge of some of these branches. That's where the snow is likely to settle the most. And again, they don't need to be overly neat because we're going to zoom out and you won't really bother too much. Okay, we're going to switch to the second colour on the bottom row, and then for the foreground ones we're going to take a bit more care. So still with the soft brush, slightly bigger on the 1% and 70% strength still. And I'm going to start with some of the branches that maybe project towards us. And when a branch projects towards us, it's more of a downward direction. And then as it goes to the side, then it starts to fan out left and right. But we'll start with the middle kind of section, just so we don't neglect to do that. Because it is one of the most important features that I often see neglected when people do these trees. And then off to the side, again, it's collecting at the top, on the top of branches. It's settling, it's snow that's settled, so it's a little bit confused on some of these because it's obscured or it's muddled in with the tree behind it, but that's not a problem. Again, just preference the top edges. And then for the one behind it, well, again, it's going to be a bit muddled, but don't worry, they're going to blend together, and that's just part of the aesthetic, really. And then over here, same principle, maybe you're just up a little bit more. You can have some big clusters too, and that's fine. And don't forget the middle ones that come out towards us, so we can do those first. Again, let's not forget them. Just kind of shapes that come down, and then very quickly they're going to swing out to be snow that's settled on the top edges. Zoom out. Again, when it's zoomed in, they don't need to look absolutely detailed zoomed in because it's a small part of a larger scene. And it is on a separate layer, so we can go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and we're going to soften it in slightly to about 4% and deselect. Let's just take stock. Maybe we'll create a new layer, layer 16. I'm going to go to the 9th color, still the soft brush, 2% size, 40% opacity, and then just on some of these, we kind of want some of this color to be, well, it is very similar to the ground, so the tree and the ground should kind of meld together and start to look like they're kind of one and the same kind of thing, really. To add it In bigger blocks at the bottom, as it gets nearer the top, it's just going to be thinner amounts, so allow it to kind of dissipate out. Keep zooming out, checking. Big areas, big shapes at the bottom. Let's zoom across. Similar kind of approach over here. Maybe we could blot out the bottom of that tree, in fact. It's too much. Build in more of this light snow. Settled. Zoom in 1%. If there's any sort of background trees now, just some textures in there. If they're showing through and we haven't quite catered for them enough, well, you can just go in there. Add some more snow. I'm going to spend a bit longer on these, just getting them really nice and neat. And you can do. I'm doing a quick application, honestly. And you spend as long as you would like to get all the little details as neat as you would like. It's not actually necessary to create the effect, but you know, I do encourage, although I might be doing it quite neat, I'm going to put it up to 60%, although I might be doing it quite untidily rather, then I do encourage people to spend a little bit longer on their version. Take the time that's needed to get it to a stage where you're happiest with it. Maybe break that up a little bit. Eraser, soft brush, small size, 2%, 100% opacity, and just, yeah, if you get some awkward shapes, just break them up. I'm going to create a new layer, layer 17. Okay, I'm going to go with the medium brush with an airbrushing on this new layer, and I'm going to go for the third color on the middle row. 2% size, 100% opacity, and well, there's just going to be some little indentations in the snow. Press lightly. In fact, I'm going to turn that down a little bit, maybe about 60%. And there's just going to be some little indentations. And as to get towards the trees, maybe snow's fallen off the trees, maybe there's little creatures. Who knows? All sorts could be happening out here in the kind of wilderness. Let's put it up. In fact, we'll go to the soft brush. Put it up 5%, maybe about 10% strength. We're going to have some dark areas creeping in at the sides, shadows, maybe an even darker colour. In fact, let's go for the second colour on the bottom row. Still the soft brush, 2% size, 15% opacity, and as it starts to join in with the trees here, you're going to get more and more shadows underneath. Ground down here, sort of blends together, get some nice dark tones. Back to the third colour, middle row. Just alternate between the two. Base of trees needs a little bit of shadow. Little tree there needs a shadow associated with it. Gives them a grounding. Makes them sit in that location better. Okay, I'm going to create a new layer, layer 18, and I'm going to go in with the 9th colour on the middle row. I'm going to go in with the medium brush with an airbrushing, 2% size, 80% strength, and well, I'm just going to do some shapes in the snow, maybe footpath, maybe footprints rather. Just disappear off into the center, and don't worry, they're all going to be the same hue and tone initially, but we can adjust that and fine-tune that. But if we just get the shape sort of tapering off there into the distance. Initially. Once you've created a few of these, they don't need to be overly neat. One thing I would suggest is to get kind of bigger as they get really in the foreground. Makes sense. Could be a whole selection of creatures and people, perhaps. Doesn't need to be overly neat because we're going to go to the adjustments, the motion blur, and just do it very carefully to the side to about 30% and deselect. And it's great in this sense that it's kind of trodden, and we can go in there and we can add highlights and we can add more shadows. So I'm going to create a new layer, tap on the N, put it to the add blend mode, going with a soft brush with an airbrushing, and then I'm going to go in with the 9th color at the top, rotate it just because it's easier to apply it, 2% size with a soft brush, 10% opacity, and then we have a shape. So just on the left side, there's going to be a lip where the sun comes here and the sun is going to bounce off this edge. Just a little bit. We don't need to go overboard. But we do want to feature it at least a little bit. When you zoom out and look at it, you can see the impact. It does create the impression that you've got a dimple, a recess in the snow. Like that. Take down 1%. And this is going to go off into the distance there, get smaller shapes, like so. Keep zooming out, having a look. Is there anywhere that just needs a little bit of a neater edge? Maybe as it gets closer there, just a little bit more defined, you can see it. Maybe just keep it this direction now so you can really just judge it in context. It's the bottom edge of these shapes. Like so. And anything else we've already done, we can go in there and just create a little bit of a highlight at the bottom edge of these shapes too. Make more of them. We'll just have things out on their own. I'm just going to turn that up a little bit, 2%. I quite like the idea that the snow is quite untouched for the most part, so I'm not going to add too much of that. Maybe just a little bit in the middle so it channels some of that light in a little bit better. I might go back to layer 18 actually with a darker colour, so maybe the 8th colour in the middle row, and just darken it up at the base of some of these trees, so maybe a bit higher, 20% or so, lower than that 2%. It's just going to be some areas that maybe on the ground, connect them up. I could even go for the black first colour on the bottom row. Makes sense. Take it down 2% and maybe about 50%. It can just be odd little item on the ground here. It doesn't need to be explained, just a couple of stones, things falling off. I'm going to go back to this area here at the base of the mountain, so I have a little bit of searching to find. There we go, layer 7. I'm going to go in with a light colour. Let's go for the 10th colour on the middle row. Soft brush with an airbrushing, low on that 2% size, about 30% opacity. And there's just an area down here. Maybe there could be some snow that's settled in patches, just like we've got here. Maybe turn it down a little bit further. Really low on that 2%, and there's just suggestions. There's more land features back there with snow settled, and you can see how it makes a bit more sense, the whole scene. Maybe over this side, a bit bigger again on the 2%, a bit lower, 20% opacity. Just some features coming in here, kind of off on the peripheral, don't worry too much. Now, we're going to do something dramatic. We're going to have the northern lights in here. So this is probably the most important feature. We'll go to the top and create a new layer, layer 20, tap on the N and put on the add blend mode. we're going to use these colours, or they look very garish. I'm going to go for the third colour on the bottom row, and I'm going to go in with a soft brush with an airbrushing, 4% size, and we can always turn the strength of the layer down. So I'm going to do it at 40% opacity, and I'm just going to have a line that kind of wiggles through a bit like this, and then another one that comes in here, dips and wiggles a little bit like this. I'm going to go to the adjustments, the motion blur. I'm going to drag it up. I'm going to put it to, in my case, about 60%. And I'm going to slide and duplicate the layer, slide and duplicate it again, slide and duplicate it again. Pinch them all together so they're all on one layer. Then we can go to the transform and, well, freeform, squash it up, rearrange it however it looks best. But the top edge, I don't want to be quite that neat, so I'm going to go to the smudge, put the smudge on the soft brush, maybe 15% size, 60% strength, and just pull up from that top edge. Like so. I'm going to go to the eraser on the soft brush, 20%, and, well, about 30% strength or so, and just remove it from the top. I don't want it to be quite as strong. I definitely want more of the strength to be down at the bottom edge. So I want it to kind of disappear in the upper areas, like so. And then with the whole layer, I'm going to slide and duplicate it again, ramp it up. And again, adjustments, motion blur, pull it up to about 40% or so. Tap on the top version and merge it down. And, well, we can tap on the A and we can turn it down or up as much as we want. I'm going to put it down to about 50%. Deselect, and then, well, we can continue working in some other colours. So I'm going to create a new layer, tap on the N, put it to the add blend mode again, and, well, we've got the red colour, slightly smaller, 3% size, and slightly less, maybe 20% opacity. I'm going to run in some of these pink colours, just be a little bit more decisive and controlled with these ones. Just run it straight up. From the middle, perhaps straight up. In fact, I'm going to turn it up a bit more, 6%. It is on a separate layer, so you don't need to worry too much. Perhaps I'm not going to do too much of it over the side. Just run it up. Adjustments, motion blur, straight up, 40%. Deselect. I'm going to repeat again. I'm going to turn it down to 4%, 15% opacity, and then just exaggerate it a little bit in places. In fact, I could even turn it down 3%. And yours will probably end up being a different arrangement. And you know what? That's all good. If you were to be in a real location where you got fortunate enough to see this in person, then it changes and undulates all the time anyway. So yours being different than mine is a good thing. Let's go to the yellow, the fourth colour, stay on the same layer. 5% size, 15% strength. A little bit of a yellow glow right in the centre, just to give it a focal area. Let's turn it down, 3%. And then just from that edge, just pull it up a little bit. In fact, we're going to turn it down even further. 5% strength. And we'll just pull it up, go over the two places, pull it up, strengthen up that glow. I've not been fortunate enough to see this in person myself. I'd really love to one day. I think it would be amazing. Third colour, pull in some more bands, individual little sections that are perhaps more noticeable. Tapping it and merge down, adjustments, motion blur up again a little bit, up to about 40%, looks good. Deselect, slide and duplicate the layer, top version, tap on the A and just put it to none or upwards a little bit. I'm going to put it to about 20%. And you can see you can just ramp it up and you can control exactly how much you want to ramp it up. Tap on it and merge down. I'm actually going to go in with the eraser to the soft brush, 4% size, 20% strength. And I'm going to be a little bit more controlled with that bottom edge. I just want to have it a slightly neater line. Maybe turn it down 3%. You kind of sculpt that bottom edge a little bit, just so we get a slightly kind of nibble look. Back in with a soft brush, 5% size, 5% opacity, and then just as a kind of finishing touch to this colour, I'm just going to intentionally run along that bottom edge a little bit, just to ramp it up. There's like a ribbon of this that runs along. I just want to make more of a feature of it, like that. Then, as one last thing, new layer, tap on the N, put it to the Add Blend mode, and then we're going to go to the Luminance light pen. And well, it wouldn't be quite magical enough without stars. Keep them cool. Let's go to the 10th color. Let's go for maybe 20% size, maybe 80% strength. And we can just feature some stars. I don't think you need to necessarily do a ton of these. There's a lot of light in the scene, in the sky. So just a few twinkling through. And yeah, unfortunately, I don't know a lot about star constellations, so I'm just going to do some random points. It'd be good enough for me, the untrained eye, but if you know about stars, then maybe you could even, really control the arrangement of those. And they are on a separate layer, so we could always go to that A and turn it down or up. I'm going to put it to about 50%. So they're there, so they're not overbearing. And there, we have our finished piece. I hope you've enjoyed following along. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I shall see you back here soon for another tutorial.